you'll either have to get it from my mic or from my guitar signal I just strummed.
All right, perfect. Yeah. Remember I said I was going to go really high. Yes.
Yep.
What's up? Welcome.
Yes.
It's another week. It's another episode of the Music Guy Podcast. How y'all doing? My name's Al Rowe. I'm a music guy. I sing, I write songs, I make records, play guitar. We're going to talk all about playing guitar today. In particular, the wild, wonderful world of dynamics. Joining me on the line, all the way from Whitby, Ontario, Mr. Michael Hebbs is here. How are you, good sir?
I'm in a great mood. Never been better.
I think we're both feeling
so
the effects of this extended, period of being alone a lot.
Yeah. You're in almost like a delirium, a blissful, crazy, loose delirium.
I'm in a pretty good mood today.
You're very loose.
It's a weird thing because sometimes you really crave interaction. Like sometimes when I'm like, if I get on the phone with somebody or if we're doing this podcast or what have you, like I get really energized by that because I've missed talking to, my friends and things like that. But, and I mean, I'm so fortunate to have Katie here, but it's nice to also connect with my friends, right? And and
I've got my dog.
But then there's these other. Coop. I've got Coop too. Yeah, that's true. There's these other days. Then there's other days where you just got no energy for it, even though it's the thing that you're not getting enough of, which is bizarre to me. Do you feel that way too?
Yeah, I think it's the same with work. Like on the days that I have one thing to do, it looms over me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do this one thing. It's like, dude, you're not doing anything all day.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything all day at least. But it's like, I just have no energy for it.
Yeah, it's
lockdown is really janking with me.
It's funny how we settle into the different realities that we're in. Mid 2018, 2019, you've got 3 shows coming up. You've got to teach and you're doing it all and you're bang, 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 bang. And you're stressed out or whatever, but not, in a huge way. And then it's just it's now you have one thing going on and you're like, man, I can't do it. It's so funny, but it's also
so weird, man.
It's also kind of weird. But anyways, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that we're here. And we've got a topic today that is, near and dear to my heart. I find myself showing this concept a lot in lessons with some of my students who are a bit more advanced. We're talking they're starting to play songs, or maybe they're a singer and they're a guitar player. They're not, learning their first 3 notes on the E string or whatever. So, but a lot of young guitar players starting out and solo artists especially, not seeing enough dynamics, guys. And I just wanted to hit that up today. So the word dynamics, I think that means a lot of different things in a lot of different disciplines, but in particular to music, how would you define dynamics?
That's a good fucking question. I mean, I guess it would just being if I were to talk about it in a way that it matters to me, it would be having different sort of levels of volume and almost attack or intensity,
Mm-hmm.
So say for instance, when you see a band that has great dynamics, is not just constantly one sort of intensity the whole time. Same with a show even, it's not just they're, just fucking your ears for 40 minutes. There's like a sense of like up and down and quiet and loud and intense and soft. But I mean, in a musical sense, it's kind of the same thing. Like in a like music theory sense, you have like piano and forte and all that stuff and all that stuff. But that's not what we're talking about. So,
well, like pretty
we're
much
not talking
is.
about how to strike the dynamics.
Well, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I think like on the most basic level, it's like how loud or quietly or / softly you're playing your instrument, right? But like you kind of said, it goes deeper than that. It could be over the course of a set list, like over the course of a 30-minute show or a 60-minute show, you're going to want to pace that show with like some louder, higher energy stuff early, maybe a ballad in the middle, maybe break it down. The band goes and has a beer for a bit and you play by yourself if you're the artist. And then, you know, kick it up for the last couple tunes and you know, and blow away your audience. So there's a dynamic sort of arc to a show in that way. And then also like you use the word intensity, which I think is really a great word. Because I think like people, I think like the first place your mind would go naturally would be like louder is more intense, softer is less intense.
Yeah.
But I think like, and we're going to get into this, but like how you're playing, you know, your attack or like the way you're hitting the instrument, even if it's really quiet, or if you're singing, like the way that you're emoting your words at a quiet volume can be like, this can be really intense. You know what I mean? And it's quite soft.
Oh yeah, Billie Eilish.
Yeah,
pretty
exactly.
intense.
That's a great example. Yeah.
Whispering. You know?
Yeah. So like
downright scary in some of her songs.
Yeah. So like intensity can actually be built by going, you know, down in volume. So changes in volume can sort of create intensity. And then, you know, dynamically, in terms of just, you know, the arc of a song. So if a show has an arc, which generally would be like, you know, you start off with, you know, high energy stuff, maybe some mid-tempo stuff, and then you break it down, and then you bring it back up, and then it's over. You know, a song on a smaller level kind of has that arc to it as well, naturally. So, you know, generally speaking, if we're talking about like, you know, your average mid-tempo kind of pop song or country song or rock song or whatever, not necessarily a ballad, but it could be, it's going to start, you know, maybe at like a 7 out of 10 on the volume scale. And then as you work your way through that song, you know, when you get to the chorus, maybe you're going to bump it up a little bit. Come to the second verse, bump it down a little bit. Second chorus, bump it up a little bit.
Sure.
Bridge, you know, could go any different way, but usually there's a breakdown somewhere after the second chorus where it comes way down to like a 3 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10, you know? And then there's a moment where it builds back up and the last chorus is back to 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, maybe at the end it's 10 out of 10, like full on going for it. And so, you know, that general arc to a song is pretty easy to, well, not easy, but it's a little bit more straightforward to pull off in the context of a band situation, or if you're arranging something, you know, on Pro Tools or Logic or whatever, and you can take elements out or add new elements in. You know, that's a great way to sort of, you know, hit those notes, so to speak. Like when you go to your breakdown, you're going to take the drums away. You're going to take maybe the bass away. You're just going to go down to one acoustic guitar and a vocal, and then you bring those elements back in at the end of that breakdown, coming to your third chorus, and the song's hitting hard again. So that's one way to do it. But if you're playing solo, and this is kind of going to be geared towards that, I think, like the solo acoustic sort of thing, but I think it also applies to you know, the band dynamic as well. But when you're playing solo, you have to find ways to emulate those dynamic changes of elements of the song leaving or coming back, or the song being smaller and then growing. And there's more ways to do that than just simply how loud you're playing, right? So, but of course, that's a great place to start. So yeah, I think for like a lot of people that I'm coaching or doing lessons with, and you know, solo acoustic acts that I see, or well, not anymore, but that I did see before everything shut down. It's like strumming the guitar pretty much as hard as they can the whole time, and like, you know, sort of singing, you know, at a moderate to loud volume, depending on how high or difficult the notes are. You know, the voice gets louder as you sing higher and whatever. But I think what you'll find if you really dig into this particular aspect of performing is that you'll become a much more engaging performer. It's like you said with Billie Eilish, like sometimes she's just whispering, like the quietest. Like, can you imagine her recording that song? Like, she's probably like so close to the mic. The mic's like cranked all the way up just so they can.
They don't use a pop filter.
Oh.
They don't use a pop filter, and they literally, like, her lips are touching the grill.
Yeah. And so you get this super engaging. That's really cool. Yeah. So you end up with this super engaging performance. And, you know, just in solo acts that I've watched and really enjoyed, you know, like Joey Landreth comes to mind, like his solo stuff without a band. Like he'll be like 6 feet off of the mic and like barely touching his guitar and like singing at a conversational level. And, you know, the entire room will be silent because the audience, like, they want to hear, you know, what's happening. And then, you know, that gives him all kinds of room to work with. So this kind of comes into the first point that I want to make here, which is don't ever hit your ceiling dynamically. So what that means is, like, if you're I shouldn't say ever, but don't hit your volume ceiling. So like as a guitar player, the loudest thing you can do, if I'm just solo acoustic, the loudest thing I can do is probably like just strum pretty hard and play all the strings at once, right? So if I'm going like, right, that's about as loud as I can reasonably play. I could probably play a little bit louder, but it would just start to sound awful. Even that doesn't sound great to me. And if my whole show is that,
it doesn't.
People are gonna not enjoy that, right? So you only want to get to that ceiling at choice moments when you're trying to, you know, maybe at the very end of a song or at the most intense moment of a louder part of a song or something. But you know, if that's your 10 out of 10, you know, the rest of the time you want to be operating at, you know, a 6 or a 7, or sometimes you're going to want to be at a 3 or a 2. So in order to sort of define what that range is, I think you have to get comfortable and find a way to play that's not this. And I think most people would benefit.
Also, you need to be physically comfortable doing that. Because most people, when they strum, think out of, and myself included, out of like just like rustiness or like lack of practice or like anxiety from playing, or just, you know, feels better to just whack something. They're not comfortable with just like hitting a chord really gently, because that's actually hard. It's way harder, you know. And like what you were talking about there, I feel like with the really, 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 really loud hitting, that's like almost.
Oh. Are we back? Hello.
We're back.
What happened?
Hello. I can't. Oh, I have no idea.
What was that? Little blip in the matrix there.
I can't see your video.
Weird.
But Sylvie. But
hold on.
The thing that I was saying was.
Go ahead. Yeah.
the thing that you were playing before is like almost like 11 out of 10 because it's almost more like a for show thing, you know, when you're hitting that hard. Like I saw this one video that's like a step further than this, and it was this guitar player doing a solo, and at the very end of it he was hitting really really hard, and obviously it didn't sound good, but like people were like, whoa, you know, because it's like cool, it looks cool. And then at the end of it he started like snapping his strings intentionally, and I'm like, that's a cool show thing, but it doesn't sound good, but it's a cool like visual. But I used to hit that hard, and I still catch myself doing it all the time, but it's like it doesn't sound good. Like, and I know when I listen to you play, like you never hit that hard, you know.
Well, I try not to, but yeah, I mean that's an extreme example of where like everybody's on board, like the audience is on a journey with that player where they've been working towards this for, you know, however long. It's not like they just came out on stage and started doing that. Like I saw a Big Wreck a few years back, and at the very end of their show, like, I mean, they're such a loud band to begin with, but you know, at the end of their show, whatever, like Ian Thornley's just going crazy, doing this solo or whatever, and it ends up with like so much feedback going on and just noise, right? That at the end of his solo, he like, I think he just hit all of his strings, and like, it's, you know, this is like the loudest thing you could imagine, and just like, and everything's feeding back, so it's just like cycling and getting huge, and he just puts his guitar on the stage and walks off the stage, and that's the end of the show. And so for like the next like minute, it's just like whoa, like the loudest just noise. But it was cool because you were like, the entire song had been building to that point, and you were like, whoa, this is crazy. But I mean, but if you're not doing that, like, I think a lot of people would benefit from dialing back their volume of attack with their pick or what have you on the guitar, because like you're saying, it just doesn't sound as good when you're hitting super hard. You know, if I play this G chord this hard, you know, it's like, it hurts me, you
just
know?
What's like, I don't even know if it's like an EQ thing. Like it almost sounds like like when you hit a drum too hard, you know what I mean? Like the notes get kind of choked. Like it's really muddy.
It doesn't allow the instrument to sort of resonate. Normally it's a little bit harsher. Whereas if I go, where I'm hitting like a third as hard, but it's like kind of almost the same volume. It's obviously not quite as loud, but you hear all that warmth, right? Because the body of the guitar is allowed to resonate and do its thing. So as a bass line, I would suggest to try playing more softly than you think you need to, and start there, especially if you haven't considered this stuff before. I mean, obviously there's awesome players that are hopefully listening right now who already know this, and you know, obviously that's cool. But you know, if you haven't considered this before, I would really recommend that, because it's helped me a lot in terms of playing. So don't hit your ceiling. So how do we do that? We do that by, you know, not strumming as hard, obviously. But there's a few different ways we can sort of manage our volume so that we don't, you know, get too out of control. So if we've established this baseline of like, you know, the loudest I really want to be playing ever is like, you know, that's my, you know, 7-8 out of 10. And it's not going to get much louder than that unless I'm going like, you know, I don't know, doing shots or something.
Sure.
You know, maybe I'll accent a little bit, but I've given myself room to do that by, you know, dialing back my bass line. So anyways, I think I've talked enough about this. But so what else can we do? So the first thing I wanted to bring up was the pinky trick, which sounds kind of naughty.
Never heard of it.
But this is something I do all the time, and basically all it is, and if you're watching the video version of this, you'll be able to see, is on my picking hand, I'm just taking my pinky finger and sort of resting it / holding onto the high E string of the guitar. So if I'm playing my G chord, instead of getting this with the high E in it, if I put my pinky on that E of my picking hand, still hold my G chord the same way if I want, doesn't matter. Now I get this. So let's say we're doing everybody's favorite chord progressions, G and C add 9, right? So let's go. Pinky's on right now. The pinky is on. And then let's say we get to our chorus. Now I've got that high E going. Now back to our verse.
High C.
Right?
Yeah.
So it just adds and takes away one little element. So it's kind of a subtle thing, but I think it makes a big difference over the course of a song if you're sort of, because as a guitar player, if you're playing solo, you know, there's not a lot of elements you can take away. You've just got the one guitar. But if you can take away a string or two, that's kind of like, you know, a band, you know, the lead guitar player laying out in the second verse in a band to bring the dynamic down. If you can take a couple of your strings away, right? So that's going to leave
and
more.
you can do that with your pick too, for sure.
Yeah.
Just like in terms of choosing what you're hitting. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like
exactly.
I hope I'm in tune, like, you know, instead of doing, because I see this a lot when people are strumming too. They're doing like, they're hitting their whole guitar. They're hitting every single string when they're strumming. You know what I mean? Instead of going like, so I'm hitting like some low strings in the down strum and then some high strings. But also too, you could just focus on the lower strings. As opposed to that definitely would make a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the pinky thing is really cool. I've never thought of that.
Yeah, no, I mean it's essentially it's the same idea as what you're saying. Yeah, it's like if you can choose what strings you want to do, what strings you want to hit. Yeah, like if I'm going G to C and I'm just hitting my lower 3, you know. And then in my chorus, I bring them all in.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, holding that high E with the pinky is just a way of sort of doing that without consciously trying to not hit it with the pick. You know, it might be worth trying for you folks at home. So yeah, that's one sort of quick way to do to sort of lower your volume in your verses is just hold it with the pinky and then you're good. Palm muting's another thing that I'm sure like a lot of guitar players have obviously heard of, and that's where you're sort of taking the sort of more the side than the palm, but it's like the side of your picking hand, sort of as your pinky comes down on the side there. You know, there's sort of like a fleshy part of the hand, and you're resting
the part
that
you karate chop thing with.
Karate chop, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And you're sort of resting that on the bridge so that for me it's I'm kind of like right on the what would this thing be called? The saddle or something? I don't even know.
Yes, yeah, I guess that would be the saddle, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to be like on the strings because I mean, I guess it could be. It's going to be really tight if I'm on the strings.
You're like heavy Metallica.
And if I get
the guitar sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the further I get towards the bridge, it opens up. So if I come in, it's maybe a little too much, you know. This is sounding a little better. And then this is a little bit more open. So I've got some options there. And I'm also, just by habit, I'm doing the pinky thing right now. I'm holding onto that high E string as well so that I don't hit it. So, you know, I've only got 5 strings playing. Or 4, I guess, depending on which chord I'm on. And palm muting. And if you're doing a verse, you know, and then you can build out of it. And here's your chorus. So, you know, pretty straightforward stuff, but like, I just feel like I don't see people doing this as much, and I want to, especially in that. One thing that I like to do is like, I'm always sort of thinking, I'm always like imagining that I'm playing with a band if I'm playing solo, because that's like what I wish I was doing all the time. And so in like a typical, I don't know why I think this way. I'm sure there's like a reason, but like for me, it's like the second verse is the more groovy verse. The first verse is like kind of normal. The first chorus is louder. The second verse is like the groovier verse. So like I'll probably you know, I'll tend to play like the first verse kind of more lightly and you know, less you know, loud and all that.
Busy.
You know, and less busy. Yeah. Here's my first verse, you know, and then when I get into the chorus, it gets louder. I add more strings. And then here's the second verse.
Sure.
You know, building up into, that's kind of like a forte piano kind of deal, where you're building, and then that's when you can hit, you can touch you flirt with your volume ceiling for a second there, and then come right down, and that's gonna like draw your audience in, I think, because it's you know.
I'm sure drummers think about this all the time. You know what I mean? Dynamics.
Yeah.
More so than us fucking guitarists.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're just doing the same thing for the whole song.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're not.
But it's.
Yeah.
That's the thing with drummers. Like, it's like I feel like if you left out a few details, you're like, man, that job's really easy. But it's like, oh, well, they're just focusing on things on such like a micro level that I just don't. And I'm trying to.
Yeah.
But I definitely, like, compared to like 16-year-old me, I'm like, I'm playing the right note and I'm playing fast, so it's all good.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean they're also playing, you know, 4 limbs at once or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, Palm Mute is pretty straightforward, but like coming even out of a chorus and building into a you know, because most people would think like, well, you're building so you can get louder, but like sometimes if you build and then you don't get louder, it's like, you know, it's not what people were expecting. So it draws them in, right? It gets their attention. It builds intensity. Sudden changes in dynamics like that can really build your intensity, actually, if in a good way. So Palm Mute, kind of an obvious one, but really worth working on in your strumming, I think. Having consistent downstrokes, palm muted.
Yeah.
You know, good timing, good evenness. I'm doing a little bit of accenting, so playing around with, you know,
that's another thing as well. You know,
or you know, boom.
Yeah.
And again, this is like, you know, I'm thinking about a band. I'm thinking about what's a drummer doing. You know, is the drummer going gooms, pads, booms, pads, booms.
Yep. Yeah.
So, you know, I'm hitting those, like you were saying earlier, choose what strings you want to do. And this is like a Dave Grohl thing. The low strings are the bass drum. The high strings are the snare drum. Boom, pa, boom.
Sure.
And it sounds so like, it sounds so, you know, infantile or whatever, but it's like, if you do this stuff when you're playing solo, it makes such a huge difference for your listeners, I feel, to draw them into this world of there's a band playing here, even though there's not.
It's like there's so many different ways when you do that to do a strumming pattern too. Like if you take like Brown Eyed Girl, like, you know what I mean? If you do, so there I'm hitting every single string at once, and I don't ever like really. I don't ever feel like that's a good idea. Like, I never, you know what I mean? Like that's the same pattern, right? And
Yep.
that's so much different than, you know what I mean? But there's a bajillion ways to do that because you're choosing high and low strings and like how many strings. I didn't have my volume on there, so we're just gonna take the mic audio for this whole thing.
That's like, it sounded great. It sounded really groovy, man. Like it was good. It was happening. Yeah.
The hollow body electric guitar.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, man. So, palm. I mean, I think we've probably said all that needs to be said there, but yeah, I mean, just practicing your downstrokes, being, even, and then being able to strum up and down and do any of your, like if you're talking about the brown-eyed girl sort of pattern of being able to do that palm muting.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's a loose palm mute, like I'm not.
Yes.
I mean,
that
I
was
could,
one of the
but
things that I was going to mention as well. With palm muting is you have to get used to taking it on and off.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just always palm muting. You're not just always going. There's like that takes some getting used to. I remember really struggling with that. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, even just lifting it off for the odd note.
Yep.
Adds so much groove. And I mean, inside of playing with a band, this is going to do a lot as well, too. Like, this is going to do a lot solo, but, a pattern like that. Now it's like, what are the other members of the band going to do to sort of complement that, rather than just going?
Yeah,
it's like so much less interesting.
Yeah.
Right? So much more musical when you're sort of thinking about these things. So the next thing is arpeggio, which is you're playing different strings of the chord individually. So again, we've got our G chord.
Yep.
So this is a good way to have some forward motion, but bring the dynamic level down, or like imply that to me it implies that there wouldn't be drums playing if it was a full band here. To me it implies that there wouldn't be drums. This would be like my breakdown.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to hear that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of a situation in which it would be rare. I think in Stop This Train, is there a drum going, or is that just guitar?
I don't know. I think it's mostly him just doing like.
Yeah, it would be like you would barely notice the drums there. Like 9 times out of 10, you're not arpeggiating when a drummer's doing things. I mean, you're not arpeggiating in that sense. Like there's that pattern. I was working on. There's a Maren Morris song, and he does that sort of thing. But that's a whole different thing. You're talking about like just going through. Like another song that I'm working on is. Do you know what song that is?
Not yet. Is that a Lone Star tune?
It's that Alison Krauss song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And in the case of that, it's the same thing. Like it's arpeggiating.
When you say nothing at all. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the title is.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's not going to be a drummer during that. But that's like once again, in like that, not in that song, but in the second verse of that, you might actually be going to chords. Like.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because you want to bring the energy up, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But just like having that available instead of just always being stuck in. For that song, it makes sense to do that and just lay it down.
And it's kind of like a fundamental part of the song too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, is that a great.
Yeah, that's a wicked
That's
song.
hard to do. That stuff is hard to do.
Yeah.
Like that's, once again, like, and I'm not like blowing smoke up your ass. But that is like the thing that like I like so much about your playing, and it's undervalued like 10 years ago when we were younger. You know, it's like, oh man, this dude can like shred, and it's like, but like no one can really do what you're doing. You know what I mean with your rhythm?
Oh, thanks.
Like
Man.
with you specifically, Al. It's like that is so hard to get, you know. And you can work on it obviously, but nobody does.
Well,
You know,
I mean,
how
I can't
hard to hit.
I can't play the
solid
shreddy
and-
stuff, so it's a trade-off.
Nobody gives a shit about that though. Well, at least I don't. I mean, you can shred, you can solo and stuff. You play lead guitar. I just mean in the sense of that there's a lot of guys who can shred, but there's just not a lot of guys that can do what you're doing. You know, like say for instance that part, nothing at all. That's really tough for me to do that. Just arpeggiate stuff on acoustic. You know.
Yeah, the worst one, maybe not the worst one, but I'm gonna butcher it.
Yes.
What is that song? Something by Keith Urban, right?
It's the Keith Urban song. That video is very sexy.
Can't
Long Hot
sleep.
Summer.
Oh, great tune, man.
Yeah, I remember learning that song and watching the video and being like, man, I gotta turn this off. Just the two people pretty much banging in a car. Like,
Oh, I think I've seen that.
I'm pretty
actually.
sure it's that one.
Yeah. Oh no,
Yeah.
no. You're thinking of.
Very sexy.
I think it might be. Is that a? Oh, maybe it is that one. Or maybe it's a different. I don't know. Yeah, I know the video you're talking about though. It's very sexy.
There's one. Maybe. Oh, it's a different Keith Urban song then. Maybe.
Yeah, but I know the one
There's
you
certain
mean.
videos
though.
like that I can't watch. Distracting.
Too distracting,
Can't
man.
handle
For
my
sure.
emotions.
So anyway, that one's particularly hard because you got to palm mute and arpeggiate. But arpeggiating is one of the hardest things to do. But even just like if you're just playing a song solo, and by the way, like I don't know if this goes without saying, but like this is all stuff that might not be in the song actually. Like if you're doing a cover song, right? Like if I'm doing Brown Eyed Girl, you know, and my chorus is this. La 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 ti da, right? My second verse can be this.
Yep.
Guaranteed,
verse is not that.
there's no instrument on the original record that's doing that. But if I'm playing this at a bar,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna do that because it's gonna imply that the band came down, the drummer closed the hi-hats, you know, the lead guitar player stopped soloing, you know what I mean? It implies that. And then if I wanted to break the song down for some reason, maybe the third verse, if there is one, I don't remember. You know, here's my breakdown.
Sure.
And I'm not really
Yeah.
doing like any particular picking pattern, but it's just kind of like being aware that, kind of just feeling it after a certain while. Or maybe, you know, if you're new to this stuff, you pick out a couple of patterns that you like and get good at them. But like, just strumming a chord in a breakdown of a song and just going.
Yes. Leaving space. Yeah.
Hitting a couple strings in there, it's just like it continues the forward motion of the song without, you know, but allowing you to keep your perceived dynamic level down. And like
Fatiguing listener.
exactly, and you might not even be playing that much more quietly than you were when you were doing the chorus. But it just
Yeah.
it implies that you
intensity,
are,
yeah.
even though you're kind of not. So arpeggiating, nice, especially for breaking stuff down.
This,
Go ahead.
this next one is one that I think is important too. Do you know what I mean by thwacking? I like wrote it in the notes, so I wasn't sure if you were like gonna grab it.
Whacking the guitar.
You know what I mean?
Like you talking like
Whacking the guitar. Yeah, stuff like that.
yeah, man.
Like that's definitely a for John Mayer doesn't like it on electric, but for acoustic,
Yeah.
it's a big one. For me on electric, I like it, but
I like it on electric.
just being comfortable with that.
I
That's all I have to say is that it's awesome.
it's hard to get. I don't know when I learned how to do it. I think I was just playing a lot of solo gigs, there was a couple of years where I was just playing like 2 solo gigs a week at least. Like every weekend I was driving to Guelph.
Yeah, no,
you know?
I remember that.
And I guess I was just watching people and just, you know, in a way, like solo gigs, if you're doing the 3-setter, you know, you're in the corner of a restaurant or bar or whatever, and like people are kind of listening, but it's not super high pressure gig. You just kind of have to be there and be playing. It can be a nice sandbox to try these things out. And I think that's what I was doing over those couple of years. It was just like, I'm going to figure out how to add a backbeat to like every song I do, you know?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I think you can overdo it. And of anything, this is actually maybe the one that people do too much, dare I say. I feel like every time I get a song demo that's been recorded on somebody's phone, you know, like the writing session circle demo, there's like 2 guitar players and all I can hear is just like I can't even hear what the chords are. It's just like everybody's like so into it and they're like, you know, just grooving super hard on the song or whatever. And it's great, but I think be careful again dynamically that you're not hitting it too hard, because if you're going through like a PA system with some bass on it, that's really gonna carry. So there's a certain delicacy that you need to have in hitting the guitar. But yeah, just sort of it's hard to teach this one too, but like you're sort of almost like coming down with a palm mute on the right hand and picking the strings at the same time. That's sort of how I think of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Do you ever do the thing where you push the strings down, like even that thing we should mention, just killing the notes, that's another thing as well.
Yeah, that's a good...
Literally going...
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, that's definitely something worth mentioning. Because there's a big difference between...
Yeah, that's true.
And, like... Not even, like, you don't have to get that thwack. You could just get that... Just the notes dying.
It's true.
You know, that's a big one.
Yeah. And that's a great point.
Smack your guitar.
Yeah. And also to that point as well, like if you can't quite get the coordination, but even like a chord like A, for example, just sort of relaxing the chord grip with your left hand, and maybe like if you're watching this video, like you can see I'm putting kind of my other fingers on the strings with my left hand so that I get this muted sound, right?
Yeah.
You know, that'll give it that groove as well. So this is a really useful one. Again, this is kind of like a second verse thing. It's like I want to feel like the drums are in the song now, you know, or maybe it's like a halfway through the first verse thing, right? So maybe I'm going, you know, here's my first verse. I'm kind of strumming, kind of arpeggio.
I love the brown-eyed girl.
And then here comes the drums. Here comes the drums.
Yeah.
You know, so just again implying that things are coming in or leaving the arrangement, even though you're just one player, right? So yeah, that's a great one. Adding that thwack, that drum beat.
That's what I call it.
Yeah, I like it. So another way to do this sort of thing is by using different chord voicings. So most of us, I think, are familiar with, you know, the quote unquote cowboy chords, you know, the second, third fret kind of stuff, D, G, A, E, right? But like G, for example, everybody's favorite chord, you know, take that up to, you know, 10th fret on your A string and 12th fret on your B string, and just play the middle 4 strings of your guitar. You know, now I've got this. So when I'm going, you know, G to C, I could go like this, you know? And I'm just sliding it down to 3rd fret for the C.
I like that 10th thing. Yeah.
going to give a change of flavor too, because people are going to get tired of listening to G, C, and D all night on an acoustic guitar, right?
Yeah.
So like, how can you make that more interesting? Switch it up. Go there. Go to a bar chord.
Yeah, bar chords kind of behave differently too. You know what I mean? Like you can release them. That's a big thing. Fucking out of tune.
Yeah.
Love that so much. Love this guitar because of that. But you can't do that with an open chord. At least I can't. That sort of like pulsing boom, 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 boom. You know?
Yeah.
That's me doing the same strumming pattern. I'd have to kill the notes. But that sounds different than another one that I like in terms of voicings is a really, really good, if you want to see literally the perfect acoustic set, it is Prince acoustic. It was live for MTV. It was from the Musicology tour. And it's literally the perfect acoustic set. Now, obviously, like for, you know, if you're like a singer-songwriter and you're not planning to be like a guitar virtuoso, because he plays, you know, I don't want to say he plays bullshit, but I call everything bullshit. When you're not playing like chords, when you're playing fills and shit, I call that bullshit. Yeah. And not in a bad way. It's just what I call it.
Yeah.
And Prince is like my favorite guitarist, so I would never besmirch his great name. But yeah, like he nails that. You know, different voicings. Like he does this one where his thumb comes over the top. That's kind of what I was doing there. And then he's playing kind of like an F shape. But he's playing it on like the 3rd fret.
Gotcha.
And that one you can kind of get the pulsing bass with it, right? And you can do it with a minor chord as well, which is awesome. But yeah, it wouldn't hurt to learn some fills too. You know what I mean? And I've never seen that before. So, but if you want to watch that, literally, if you were able to kind of do what he's doing in these videos over everything you're doing, you'd be good. Like it's like a master class on.
I gotta check this out.
How to do an acoustic set. Also, his crowd interaction is unreal. It's like it's wicked.
Nice.
It's insane.
I gotta check that out. Are there any other sort of voicing things that I'm not? I guess, yeah, like just to get back to the bar chord thing, like one of the ones I remember this really hitting me was it called Head Over Boots by John Party. It's a big country hit a couple of years ago. And it's like, I was learning and I was like, oh, it's G. And I'll love you and hold you tight. All right, this is easy. D, E minor, C, whatever, no big deal. And then I realized it's like, no. It's those chords, but they're bar chords. They're only the bottom 4 strings.
Oh, sure.
Which rings a lot differently than the open string chords, right? It just sounds different. So, dynamically, it's a little bit less loud because open strings are one of the loudest things you can do, especially on acoustic guitar. But,
totally different.
Yeah, they just ring different, right? So
the sound, yeah.
Yeah, so if you experiment with doing some of those some of the time, I know they can be kind of a pain on acoustic because they're particularly hard to fret and stuff. But even just doing like you're saying, just play some of the bottom strings instead, or like thumb over the top, get the low string with the thumb, and then do your F shape on top.
The thing that I like about that too is sonically, I don't want to say it's less money, but that chord's got a lot in it, Whereas if you take out that middle note, it's pretty clear where the bass is, and it's pretty clear where the chord is, and then on the top you have that, which is awesome. One thing that I was going to say about, I can't actually remember. I've lost it. It happens to me so much.
It's gone. With those you can also take away the high E pretty easily by just unflattening your index finger.
Yeah.
So again, you can now we're just playing 1, 2, 3, 4 strings. We're skipping the A string by way of just touching it with the thumb. and then we're skipping the high E string by way of kind of touching it with the back of the index finger. Now you've just got a nice simple sort of voicing that's gonna you know, serve you real well, but not give away. It's gonna leave you the room. Exactly. You're not gonna give away like, here's the most I can do. It's like, no, let's start here, and then let's get there later.
This is what I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask you, what do you think about power chords on a guitar?
Oh, they sound great. Yeah.
They sound great.
I
Okay,
think they sound great.
I never know. I never know if that's like a thing. I mean, the nice thing is they don't take up as much like space, you know, as like a big open chord. But I never know if that's like, never know when to do them. You know.
I don't do them.
Like obviously, it's like a rock song.
All that often, really. To be honest, yeah. I mean, I guess I don't use them that much. I was just thinking, like, the first thing that came to mind is like doubling an electric part on a recording with an acoustic.
Yeah.
You know, just playing power chords that the electric's playing. It just adds like an extra sort of sheen to it all and definition. But like Green Day does that a lot. If you listen to any Green Day, there's always an acoustic, or often an acoustic doubling, or two acoustics doubling the rhythm electrics. Just give it more, give it more attack. But when would I actually use this? I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
There was that
like
song.
If you were doing maybe like a cover. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Isn't that like something about a truck or whatever? You know that one? Like that one's kind of got a power chord in it. I mean, if I was doing like...
Because that sounds weird to do it with a major chord. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do like that with a major chord.
There's definitely like... I'll play the A power chord a good amount, actually. Just the open 2-2, the
well,
A.
Especially if you were doing something like that Van Halen song. Like you can't do that without a power chord.
Yeah.
And if you did that with a full chord, there's a lot of situations where it's like if you did full chords, you'd sound like an idiot. Like I was telling one of my students about this, like doing what's that song? You know, I'm so edited.
Back in Black, yeah.
For some reason, I couldn't get the name.
Yeah.
But if you do that with full chords, it sounds awful.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So if you're doing that on acoustic, you probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah. There's another. I mean, there's been a. I'm sure that we could come up with tons of examples. Like even like "Courage" by the Tragically Hip. You know, just starts with that.
Sure.
You know, it's based around that.
Yeah.
That A. I don't really want to hit that major third on the A. I kind of just want to hit it. You know, as an A. And even if we're thinking about like G, like if I take away the A string of the G, if I just skip it, that's essentially a power chord because it's not hitting any thirds, right? And D, I'll very often just play D without the top note, which is a power chord.
But do you often do, like I'm talking more so about like you know, like I'm playing this would be your B, but like an actual like almost like rock guitar power chord. Do you ever find yourself doing that?
I mean, I'm sure
like,
I do.
Than those situations.
I can't think of because also on acoustic, like I'm capoing so often that I think I would.
Hear that Leah played a gig with a guy who didn't. This is like she said ages ago in her past.
Oh yeah.
She played a gig with a guy who refused to use a capo.
Refused. Oh my gosh.
It's like that's not a part of my sound.
I refuse not to use a capo. Yeah, I don't know.
Like if someone was like, "Oh yeah, like you can't use a capo in this band," I'd be like, "Oh, okay, so you just want me to sound bad then?"
Yeah. You know what I would do?
Telling like a carpenter you can't use a hammer.
Yeah, exactly. I would do power chords on something like "Shut Up and Dance," like "Walk the Moon." You know, like in the chorus, I would maybe play full chords, but maybe in the solo.
Yeah.
It's not really gonna sound
so I guess it's
the same if you don't, but I don't know. I mean, you can hit them a little
like
harder.
yeah, like I guess it's almost like if I was like a listener to take away from that is obviously it would be ideal if on every song that you know and are playing, if you had these available, you know,
Yeah.
like that'd be a good exercise because it may come up in the future. Like, oh, this song's in B and I need to do power chords. Oh, I only know power chords in E and G, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It would be a good exercise to be like, oh, well, what are the different voicings that you know that I have available that aren't like because some voicings on acoustic guitar, like I I don't think you're ever gonna hear that for like I'm playing a B flat, but really on this guitar I'm playing a B. I'm just tuned down the thing, but like I don't hear you know, you don't hear that sort of thing.
More of an electric thing.
acoustic.
I mean, I think when
Yeah.
when they would come into play too, would be like if you're playing an E, because like open E, you know, you're gonna do your A sus2, your B sus, your C sharp minor with the high strings ringing, but then like in a verse of that song, you know, I'm gonna take those high strings away, and then I'm left with, you know, power chords. The power chords sound particularly good when you palm mute them as well. So, and you can, they're a bit more rhythmic, a bit more guttural. You can hit them harder. You know, that's a different sound.
Yeah.
Both are good. Just what do you want to do, right? That's one way of like playing a little softer, little less loud and, you know, volume, but still having intensity. Because you can kind of, it's more percussive, right? So, the last thing I wanted to hit up was just finger picking, which is kind of a whole topic of its own. But like, you know, if you're able to switch from, you know, and this is a lot of times going to be like an arpeggio thing, but like, and if you're doing that, but you do it with a you know, with fingers, that can be a really effective way to really bring it down to like a 2 out of 10 or whatever. And you know, finger style stuff can be real nice. A lot of acoustic songs sort of have it built in, you know, as like a theme, but you can also
that was gonna come out.
Oh yeah, but you can also you know, do it as you know, in any progression. If Brown Eyed Girl again, you know.
Yep.
You know, it works there too. So, but that's sort of a whole topic of its own.
There are some players that don't use a pick at all.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind, and it's like he can use a pick. It's just he prefers not to. That's like his sound. Is Marcel?
Oh yeah,
Marcel Rousseau,
yeah.
I said his last name. He uses his fingers, and it's like it's a different tone. You know, like that's like if you're really getting into the weeds, like when you hear somebody strumming like with a pick versus their fingers, is going to be a lot duller. There's another thing also with your fingers. Now I'm gonna butcher this because I don't do this. Have you ever heard of frailing?
Is that where you sort of like expand your hand, like you roll out your hand? Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah, so there are people who strum like that. Like, I once again know nothing about flamenco guitar.
Yeah,
but that's what I think they're doing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like that sort of thing.
Bring.
But the idea is, I'm picking with my thumb, and then I'm flicking my middle finger, and that sounds a lot different than going with a pick.
Yeah.
You know, like one's louder, but just the tone of it is going to be different. You know, I'm trying to think of who plays acoustic guitar with their fingers.
Ed Sheeran, I think, does really a bunch.
Good. Yeah. Like not finger picking particularly, but almost like they're using their fingers to strum.
Exactly.
As like a.
Yeah, he does that a lot, I think.
Can't think of anyone though.
Yeah, or I mean, even on just the most basic level, like strumming with your thumb instead of strumming with the pick.
It has a
you
different
know?
tone.
Different tone, much lighter dynamics, and you could do that for the verse. And then bring the pick in for the chorus, and you're gonna get a huge bump there, and it's gonna make the song more exciting.
Yeah. Something.
That's all I got for this topic. Do you have anything else you want to hit up?
I mean, not really. Like, I'm trying to think. Yeah, like that's about it for like getting dynamics out of your performances. I mean, I once again know nothing about this because I've never done a solo gig, but there's just stuff that I'm always from like the sidelines being like, yeah, they should do this, but it's like, well, you're not doing that, Mike, so you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be like a backseat driver, but it is cool to be from that different perspective. One thing that I think would be cool on acoustic that I want to see more is like thirds, like verses and shit like that. Or even like not like riffs, but like funkier riffs, like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Just that sort of stuff. But I don't know if that would sound good. And also, too, you'd have to sing while doing that. So
I think it would. Yeah, I think it would sound dope.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you do tenths ever on acoustic?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, with the G string open in the middle.
Ring out. But do you ever do like the Justin Bieber "Love Yourself" thing? You
Oh
know,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would
that
you
could
find
be.
yourself doing that, or is that more?
I'd
Yeah.
probably do that if it was what was in the song. I don't find myself busting that out.
But you wouldn't. Yeah, you wouldn't write that into a part.
Probably not, but you could. I mean, I don't do it very much. Maybe I should do it more. You know, but
I
yeah,
do wonder
it's an
about these
option.
things, you know.
Yeah. You can do them on the E and G strings as well. Classic tune. Remember that one? Collective Soul, World I Know from
Oh yes, yeah.
back in the 90s.
It cuts in and out because of
Oh,
the gate.
yeah,
Ooh,
sorry.
there is one more thing that is worth mentioning, is like drop D, and this is more so a question on my part. How do you think drop D comes across on acoustic? Depending on the riff, right?
I think it sounds good. Yeah, I mean, if you've
That
got a
low
riff
D?
that really wants it, like, you know, Everlong comes to mind for me as a song that you kind of have to be
Yes,
drop
sure.
D, because you want to be able to get this chord, which is
Yes.
like 5-5-7-7 open open. You know, being able to play the top open strings E and B as you move through these drop D voicings is pretty effective, right? So, but I wouldn't like, just because a song is in D, I wouldn't automatically drop the D. I don't think.
But like, so say for instance, because I always wonder more so about like, I almost find that I'm out of tune once again, but that's like, do you find that that's too deep when you're doing like for an acoustic? I almost find, once again, I've never done it myself.
I think it depends on the song. Like if you're, you know, if the song calls for it, I think that's more of like a characteristic of the song,
Yeah.
right? So like, you know, Fishing in the Dark.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, that's pretty clearly there's a drop D thing going on. You know,
Yeah.
American
that
Honey by Lady
Creed?
Antebellum. You know,
Okay.
or yeah, any Creed song, of course. But yeah, you know, but
All I hear are glimpses of your guitar is the gate.
Oh, okay.
Because of my internet connections.
Yeah.
I just thought I heard the beginning of whatever Creed song.
yeah, I mean, you wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to pull off Higher by Creed without being a drop D. But I think it's pretty
We should
characteristic.
try to get Scott Stapp on the podcast.
Big
He's
fan.
not doing
Big fan,
anything right
Scott.
now.
Get on here.
He's wicked, but
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Yeah. But no, I probably wouldn't tune down much just because then I got to tune and stuff. But
Yeah.
if the song calls for it, there's some iconic ones. Yeah, you're gonna tune down for them. But you can also fake drop D pretty effectively. Like even that Lady A tune I was just doing. Like if I just mute my low E string with my thumb.
Yeah.
And play the A and the D open. I mean, obviously it's not the same, but it's pretty close, you know? It's a good sort of...
In a band context? Like
Yeah.
live? Maybe in the studio, yeah, like the drop D. But I do find that like a pickups, like a guitar pickup plugged in, like acoustic guitar pickup plugged in to the PA with the drop D, with those big, deep notes.
Can be muddy.
I don't know if it comes across.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because if we're saying that, oh, I'm still in drop D, but one thing that I always do, I don't know if you do this with G, is I take my index finger off.
Oh, yeah.
And I let that note kind of go away because I find that B is too muddy.
Yeah.
If that's too muddy, then man.
Well, it's a
Drop D's gonna be
third. I
muddy
mean,
as
drop
fuck.
D, at least it's a fifth.
True that.
But
true that.
yeah, I
that's
mean,
true.
you know, like the G thing, I'll bring it in for effect, but I usually leave it out. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You know,
But it is cool. Like the art of playing acoustic guitar is something that, man, I would trade all of the wanky stuff that I do for just being a guy who could just fucking come in and be like a drummer, but on acoustic guitar. Be like a great drummer, but on acoustic guitar, you know? Like, irreplaceable.
I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, but you know, I've heard you play acoustic and it sounds great. But
Oh, yeah. I can play,
acoustic
you know,
and
but I'm talking about, I want more, Al. I want more. I want to be the shit.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, acoustic is definitely a different instrument in a lot of ways, and I don't feel as at home on electric as I do playing acoustic, and I'm sure the opposite is true for somebody like yourself who plays mostly electric guitar. So
Yeah.
but I think these dynamic things, I mean, on electric you've got pedals, you've got volume, you know, you've got volume pedals, you've got your pot, volume pot to control stuff, you've got different effects, you're switching things in and out. So it's a whole...
And you're playing with a band, always.
Yeah, and you're typically playing with a band. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do in addition, but I think all of this stuff still applies. Because there's a lot of great guitarists who, you know, the mythos about them is that they just went straight into the amp, you know, no pedals, like Angus Young or whatever. Isn't that the thing about him? It's like no pedals, just straight into the amp kind of thing.
I'm pretty sure he is. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of guitarists like that. I'm pretty sure Jeff Beck is like that. I don't want to say Eric Clapton's like that, but I'm sure at one point he was. But that's the whole thing. Like Derek Trucks is like that. Definitely all these things, like just, you know, having dynamics in your playing and almost having like, we didn't mention this specifically this way, but like having the dynamics in your playing like a drummer has ghost notes. You know what I mean?
That's
Not
a great
every
idea.
strum is the same velocity or like aggressiveness, you know. That's definitely something that I'm still working on and just making sure that like when you're playing a strumming pattern, like it's not, you know, like everything the same velocity. Because even then, obviously it was a bit sloppier, but it still sounded way less professional.
Right, that's true.
That's always what I'm trying to get across. It's professional.
Yeah.
You know, like
professionalism.
That seems to be the thing.
That's
no, but like it with the sound, there are certain sounds that I like associate with like a professional guitarist. You know, like when I listen to, I bring up Justin way too much on this podcast.
Oh,
when
yeah.
I listen to someone
good guy to bring up.
At a really high level, it's like you can just hear that it's professional. They could play the same riff that I'm playing or that you're playing but it's just going to sound better because of the little subtle changes that they've made, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is so cool. I think that's the neatest thing.
We should try to get Justin on. That'd be unreal.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That would be unreal.
So there's a note in here saying Rhett Shull video.
Oh, so I was thinking we were going to talk more about like the physics of playing guitar and playing it well, and which is a video we're totally going to do. But you were talking about hitting hard versus soft, right? And there is actually a video by Rhett Shull, and we'll include it in the notes for this. Essentially, he talks about how hard you hit the guitar.
Oh, sweet.
And how hitting softer actually might just be better. Like that was my understanding. My understanding now is that not the soft you hit, but we should be hitting like almost like 30-40% softer, because that brings out more of tone is the wrong word, but it allows things tonally to sound better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like say for instance, if you hit too hard, you're not going to hear the strings properly. You know what I mean? You're just going to hear whoa when you're playing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So in his video, he talks about the science behind that. And he talks with Tim Pierce in it, actually.
Oh,
He's
nice.
this amazing session guitarist. And so say, for instance, when you're playing like a blues line, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. It probably didn't make it through the gate there,
No, it did, and it sounded way better.
I was barely hitting. Yeah. And the idea is you could be louder then, right? So instead of me, if I play quieter and they turn me up louder, we'll be at equal volumes, but my tone will just be better.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you want to work on that stuff, you have to hit whisper quiet. Like that definitely did not make it through the gate. But that's a really cool thing too.
Yeah. It's one of the first things that when I took a lesson with Justin, he said, like, pick way quieter, like pick super softly when you're practicing your scales and your stuff. And it's like, okay, shit. Yeah. And it's, and that was probably one of the first times that I even had somebody tell me that. And I mean, that was a couple years ago only, but over the last couple of years, I've really noticed. Oh yeah. Big time with drums. Yeah.
Like someone was saying, that John Bonham, which I don't necessarily believe specifically with John Bonham, but they're saying that he didn't hit hard. It was just the compressors, how they set them. But like, if you look at him, he's like, I see him going like, whoa. He really looks like a fucking Viking when he's playing.
I don't know about that, but I mean, you can definitely hear it in some of the 60s and 70s bands. Most of the 60s and 70s bands, even the more like alternative progressive ones, like they're not hitting their instruments that hard. Like, I mean, if you go back to the Beatles or whatever, like Ringo's playing quite softly for the most part, I think. And it still sounds huge. And I mean, even like Blue Oyster Cult, like I don't know why that song came to mind, but
oh yeah. Dude, the sound of that record, yes.
But like, they were like, that song is so heavy and progressive, but the drumming is not. They're not wailing. Like it's and I think the players of that era were coming from the era of like jazz and blues or whatever being on top, where you weren't hitting as hard as you possibly could. I don't know when that started, maybe in the 80s, or maybe, people trying to mimic the sound of super hyper compressed drums from like hair metal bands and stuff, or like Phil Collins stuff, where they do, that sounds like he's wailing. I don't know if, how hard Phil hits. Rich would know that better, but like, people trying to emulate that, and then, guys like Dave Grohl who just like unapologetically hit as hard as they possibly can, and that's a different style, but and he sounds amazing, and like that's a different way of doing it too. But you know, it also
pigeonholed into one of them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like you shouldn't be only able to hit hard, which I feel like talked to me like 4 years ago, and that was the case.
Sure, yeah. And it also depends on the instrument you're playing too. Like there's drum kits out there that are, made of acrylic or whatever, and like you can just wail on them as hard as you possibly can, and I guess you're not losing anything. But like, yeah, I mean, a jazz drum set, if you hit that too hard, it just sounds horrible because it's designed to resonate and react to the smallest little touches, and that's what it's for, right? So there's also a certain amount of responding to what your instrument is asking of you, or like, vice versa, like listening to how your instrument is responding to what you're doing and trying to give it what it needs to sort of speak the best it can. This is getting very this is getting very esoteric.
I think I said esoteric. Esoteric. There we go.
But I think it's super. I think there's a lot of value to that, especially in the studio. And I mean, then you're getting into stuff like mic placement, like how close are you to the microphone, treating a microphone like an instrument too. It's like, a microphone's going to sound different depending on how much sound pressure you're putting into it. And the closer you get, the more bass there is. And like, so working that the same, in addition to working like, where am I positioning my acoustics such that I'm not only getting, straight out of the sound hole 200 hertz. If I move, if the mic's on 7th fret, a lot of people mic on 12th, which is, pretty good place to do it. But I've done stuff where I've mic'd on 7th because it sounded better and I wasn't getting all that woofiness.
Yeah.
And,
I wonder what it would sound like to hit very gently, like super duper gently, and have the mic like directly over the sound hole. Like I'm talking about what I was talking about before, like whisper, quiet.
Probably sound really cool.
But that is playing the mic like an instrument. That is something that I do not know. One thing that I did get into the practice of, and I need to get back into it, is playing acoustic guitar with a condenser with my in-ears on, and then that way I was just hearing what the mic was hearing. Because you're right, that's totally the thing. Same with singers. Like I've heard that's what trips out a lot of singers is they're not used to hearing their voice like through like headphones or even through like a condenser mic. And so that kind of throws them,
Yeah, I mean, it gets to the point where like once you get comfortable with it, like I feel like I'm more comfortable singing with a microphone than without, because you learn how to work it.
And you probably sound better with the mic,
Probably, because you learn how to work it where like when you're singing softer, you come in and then so then now you don't have to sing as loud, and in the quiet moments I can really get across by coming in, and if I'm singing a little bit louder I can back away or whatever, and it adds, it amplifies your voice, it adds all this juice to it, so you feel like a superhero sometimes. But like so when I don't have a microphone and I'm singing, it can be like pretty difficult, get pretty self-conscious, so once you get used to playing that microphone like an instrument, it becomes your what you're most used to. Your voice becomes accustomed to that rather than just singing in a room. Like that never sounds good. Give me like some compression, some reverb, like that's what I want.
Well, I wonder if it was an awesome room, like if it was a great room, maybe you'd like it,
Sure, yeah. Like I mean, that works. Church. Works too, but yeah. Sweet, man. Well, I think it's a good place to wrap us up. That was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Got into some different stuff. So if you guys like this episode, leave a comment and let us know. What are you doing to manage dynamics and any other ideas like that. If this episode was helpful, share it with somebody who you think might enjoy it. We are musicguypodcast.com for all past episodes, at musicguypodcast on Instagram, as well as Twitter and Facebook. And if you are looking for some sweet guitar playing on your next project, or maybe some steel, some lap steel, or maybe some programming, you can hit up Mr. Michael Hebbs, and he'd be happy to.
You want a video lap dance?
Yeah, exactly.
Those two.
He'd be happy to help you out. And he is at Bruno the Meek on Instagram. If you would like some acoustic stuff maybe on your next recording project, or if you have a track that needs to be mixed, or some editing stuff that you need to get done, you can hit me up, Alro Music, on any social media platform. and I'd be happy to help you out with that. And I think that's going to do it. So we'll see everybody next week. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. We'll see you next week. We got a very special guest coming, so stay tuned for that. Bye for now.